All right, let's discuss Seattle and Dallas. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about Seattle, but we probably will because there's a whole philosophical discussion here. What are they doing offensively? Where do they feel like they failed offensively? Let's start at least with Dallas, though.
Can I start with actually the PFF Green Line nailed this score 100%?
Yeah, they did, huh? 24-22. Good job,
it's not
Green
the
Line.
First time. I haven't figured out how many times it's done that, but I know there was a Thursday night game a few weeks ago that it nailed the score 100% as well.
Good job, Green Line, all part of PFF Elite for your game picks. Dallas, this was a game where we talked about their defense being capable of slowing down teams. I mean, I think a lot of it was game plan driven by the Seahawks. I mean, they were run, pass for the majority of this game. Very systematic, trying to establish the run. Dallas did a great job of stopping the run. And then they just, Seattle puts a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson on 3rd and long. Let me just say, I guess we're going to get into the Seattle philosophy. Coaches run the ball on early downs, essentially for two reasons that you hear, right? It's to establish the run, set up play action, but also to take pressure off the quarterback, right? There is no more pressure on the quarterback than 2 straight runs and then being in 3rd and 7 over and over and over again. And that was this game. You are allowed to try to pick up a first down on 1st and 2nd down. That is allowed. And I do think too many offensive coordinators get into this idea of let's just get to a manageable 3rd down when you could actually move the ball on 1st down. And every time Seattle did run play action and stretch the ball down the field, and Russell Wilson was making spectacular throws. So I don't know. Do we credit the Cowboys fans? Let's get Cowboys fans riled up. Do we credit the Cowboys defense on this, or do we blame Seattle and their ultra-conservative offense?
Here's the thing, right? I don't know that they actually did what we think they did as much as we think they did it, if that made any sense. It's just that when they did it, it invariably failed. If you actually look...
Seattle?
Yeah. If you actually look at their splits of run pass on 1st down, run pass after a 1st down, they're actually more pass heavy than they were run heavy. They didn't just do this
run, the
pass on
drills?
3rd and long.
Did you take out 2-minute
no,
drill?
I took it out. They didn't do it as much as we think they did it. It's just that when they did it, it was spectacularly bad and failed immediately. So the whole thing looks like the Browns offense that was being run earlier in the season where Baker Mayfield was just like run for nothing. Here's 3rd and 12, Baker. Have fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it looked like here. But I don't think they actually did it as much as it looks like they did it. It's just that it just looked so terrible when they did. I think overall, though, so the overall point is that this Seattle team, this Seattle offensive performance and this Seattle play calling performance is exactly what they've done all season long. And that in and of itself is worthy of discussion as to whether that is a positive thing, right? Because they're essentially running this offense that tries to protect Russell Wilson, who is probably one of the quarterbacks out there that really doesn't need protecting. He's shown that. Like, this isn't a guy that has had a career of play that, warrants protection. This is a guy that's carried this offense for years.
He has. I will say, though, and I've heard this from NFL people, too. I'm going to drop an NFL people on you. And you see this with your eyes. There are a certain number of games. We always talk about quarterbacks who have certain games they're really good, certain games they're really bad. There are certain games where Russell Wilson just misses open receivers, just from a read standpoint. Right. There is, I think, a lack of trust in a Russell Wilson versus, say, an Andrew Luck. And I know the Luck-Wilson debate, Colts and Seahawks fans love it. Class of 2012, and, who's better? Both of those guys. They're both great right now. But there is a lack of trust in Russell Wilson in a game-to-game standpoint. And he is spectacular working off of play action and the deep ball and all that stuff. That does play to his game. But it goes back to our initial point. You don't need to cram the ball into the line 25 times just to open up Russell Wilson's deep passing ability on play action, right? So you need to trust him and build the offense around him more. But I do think NFL people are more skeptical of him because he's not going to be this, three-step guy and, change the run game for the quick pass game as much as some other quarterbacks.
Well, there's two different things there. The first, this idea that you are going to get some Russell Wilson games every year that just stink. And that's true, and that's why he isn't Drew Brees or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or one of the very best quarterbacks in the league. That's why he is in the next tier.
Yes,
because you're going to
still
get
in that
games.
top 5 to 8.
Right,
you're
going to get
NFL.
games where he just sucks, and that's unfortunate. But that's him, right? The problem is you can't devise the entire offense around the off chance that you get one of those clangers every week, right? That seems to be a thing of, let's have our game plan, and if we get to the second quarter and it turns out Russell's having one of those days, let's make some changes. You can't change the entire thing off the fact that sooner or later he's going to do that, because Ben Roethlisberger has those games. And I actually think Roethlisberger is probably a good Russell Wilson comp because he will make a lot of bad throws, but he makes more than enough good throws to offset those, and you live with the bad to get the good. And the Andrew Luck debate is interesting because Luck does that as well. It's just that they're not game to game. They're within the same game. Like, Luck will suck for 3 quarters and then turn it on in the fourth, or he'll be on fire for 2 quarters.
And Wilson has that in him,
and then
too.
disappear in the second half. Like, Andrew Luck does exactly the same thing. They just don't go game to game where you get great luck, bad luck, great luck again. Russell Wilson will do it game to game. But the other thing I would say is that he is a different style of quarterback. So you can't necessarily just plug him into this Frank Reich type system where everything's coming out quick. The ball is shorter stuff. The offense is Tom Brady has been running.
But that would
Drew
still
Brees
be more
has been running.
effective than just cramming the ball down the defense's throat.
It would, but I
game.
don't think stylistic. So again, you're looking at this. Can we put that system around him and improve him dramatically the way everybody else does? He will always be a quarterback that, a bit like Aaron Rodgers, where we're like, is he the problem? Russell Wilson will always be the architect of some of his own problems because he's comfortable actually causing issues and running around the backfield waiting for something to open up. Like, that's what he does in a way some of these other quarterbacks just don't do. So there's a certain type of offense that doesn't necessarily make a huge amount of sense to put him in, but none of this none of this justifies creating a system around him that essentially hamstrings him and forces him to live only off the run game.
So that's the biggest point here, right? The entire NFL is looking for a top 5 to 8 quarterback. The Seahawks have one, and they're treating him like Blake Bortles. That's the issue.
Yeah.
You build around him. You can't go and say, "Oh no, we need to protect Russell Wilson, our quarterback." You take the good with the bad, and just say, "Look, Russell's he's gonna miss some reads, and he's gonna make a couple bad decisions." He didn't have a ton of turnover-worthy plays this year, but they were bad ones.
But he had last year.
Yeah, I know, but he did. But he was still.
The point is, you take those, right? The
Yes,
other
of
guy
course.
that had a huge amount of them last year was Roethlisberger, and he was fantastic.
And Wilson has, he had the highest percentage of big-time throws this year. He's always up there in big-time throws.
So
he's going to offset them, right?
He's just he's a more volatile quarterback than people probably think. You think Jameis, Roethlisberger, you think volatile, good and bad. You don't think that with Russell Wilson, but he actually is that kind of guy.
Well, last year he was because the pressure was on him. There have been years where he's been more protected by the running game. It has been less volatile. I would say the Roethlisberger comparison is interesting, and there's a Brady comparison to be made there too, because again, we've always been this whole, well, it's not about QB wins, but there's this history of early in Brady's career and early in Roethlisberger's career, they were those true game managers, right? And then once you took the reins, once you gave them the reins to run their offense, they both became truly Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Brady and Roethlisberger. Now, Wilson wasn't just a game manager. He was spectacular as a rookie. But they still had this, they still had a lot of games where they would win 16-10 and, 16-13. They still had a lot of defensive-minded games. There still needs to be that point in Russell Wilson's career where it's build around him. He's capable. He's like Roethlisberger and Brady went from game manager for a year or two to the guy. And then they have one of the best offenses in the NFL, both of them.
The point generally is that
Wilson should be that guy.
There's no excuse that justifies treating Russell Wilson as a rookie quarterback that must be protected at all costs. He has more than shown in the past that he is capable of shouldering the load of an offense, so let him do it.
So here's what I tweeted the other night, and maybe not enough people saw it because it was late night, but I could see Seattle looking at the last 2 years and saying, in 2017, they had no run game. There was way too much pressure on Russell Wilson. He was creating all of their touchdowns, and they didn't make the playoffs. In 2018, they were the most run-heavy team besides the Lamar Jackson Ravens, but overall the most run-heavy team, especially on first and second down, and they made the playoffs. And they ran their system to perfection as far as run, pass. But the problem with that, as we've talked about, is that is an unsustainable model. And I do think it plays with coaches' heads because they think about the perfect game that they played. And for the Seahawks, it was this year against the Detroit Lions. They carried the ball 42, 45 times. They passed 17 times. When it works, when the run game is that effective, and then Wilson goes 14 for 17 passing, like, hello, Terry Bradshaw Steelers in the 70s. Like, that's beautiful. That's great football. It happens once a year. It happens twice a year. And if you're game planning for that level of perfection, you're going to have a game like the other night where you're just pounding the ball into a brick wall when Russell Wilson should have been the guy.
The other argument I've seen people make is 3 times this season, Russell Wilson has passed the ball 40 or more times in a game. They were week 1 and 2 and week 9 against the Chargers. So week 9 against the Chargers, they lost. They lost all 3. But week 9 against the Chargers, who just beat the Ravens and are now going to the divisional round of the playoffs. Pretty good side, I think we can agree. Week 1 and 2 was at Denver, who, are a completely different team at home than they are on the road. They scored 24 points, 24-27. It was close, and they lost. No shame in losing on the road to Denver. Week 2 at Chicago. Again, like a pretty good team to be dealing with on the road, particularly after you've just had another road game at week 1. So, okay, they're 0-3, and that's not good, but is that causation or correlation? Like, did they just lose 3 tough games against 3 really good opponents, 2 of which were on the road, or is that the reason they lost those games? I would argue it's not the reason they lost them.
Yeah, and look, there's an extreme viewpoint here. Most quarterbacks, so if you look at the league, and this is my Brady apologist, comes out again. But if you look at the league when they throw the ball 40 plus times or 50 plus times, the records are horrible because, yes, you're generally playing catch up or whatever at the end. Brady's like the only quarterback in history that has a good record when he throws 50 plus. And he's also the only quarterback that is actually like game planned to throw the ball that much. So we're not asking Russell Wilson to throw the ball 45, 50 times a game, but certainly more than 30 dropbacks. Certainly more than 30 dropbacks, certainly more on second down. And if you just replace the run game with the short passing game, we just use the yards per attempt figure. That's, the short passing game is going to be more effective than the run game, and Wilson's still going to be effective off of play action. So, I think Seattle looked at this year, and the other thing that I said, I think teams, the biggest mistake that they make when they're building a team is when they overreact to their most recent season. So this was Seattle saying there was way too much pressure on Russell Wilson. We need to run the ball 60% of the time. And that's what they did this year. And it did get them to a point. I just think it's such an unsustainable model. It's very unsustainable for the Jaguars because they've got a Blake Bortles that they have to protect the whole time. It's more sustainable for Seattle because Russell Wilson can bail them out. But you still don't want to put him in 3rd and long every single time. So that's the issue.
Yeah. Also, Jacksonville's run game sucks despite having all the investment in it.
Well, that's the other part of this, right? The 2017 Jaguars run game was pretty efficient overall, and this year they regressed back. So if Seattle tries to run this again next year, there's a good chance that the run game regresses and it looks ugly. Whereas you can count on Russell Wilson in the pass game to be more stable, and you have to put the ball in his hands a little bit more. Let's talk about the Cowboys a little bit. Starting with Dak, he was very inconsistent. Nothing sums up Dak, and I tweeted this out too, and everybody's like, yep, that's Dak's career. He overthrows a fade into like the 3rd row and then drops a perfect fade in the next pass for the touchdown. Yeah. So you get away with the touchdown, which is great, but that sums up Dak's career. You've got, ridiculous misses followed by just a beautiful throw. He made some really key plays down the stretch.
Also kind of sums up the end zone fade.
Yeah, kind of does.
It's just not a high percentage play. You're going to have to take a few shots at it.
It hits about 33% of the time. So if you're dedicated to it and you run it on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down, over time.
Yeah, that play, the goal line play where teams just run into the gut 4 times. Like if you just did that for the fade, you'd probably get one of them. Right?
But over time, it's a risky one. Dak made the huge play with his legs down the stretch too. You got a QB draw on 3rd and 14 that he converted.
This was
huge play.
This was Zeke's game, though. The Cowboys loaded up Ezekiel Elliott on the ground, 26 carries, 137 yards, 78 of which came after contact. A couple of broken tackles in there. And this was nice because he ended up with a really good PFF grade for this game because Zeke was a big part of that success. It wasn't all the offensive line opening up huge holes. There wasn't a caveat. It was like, yes, but he blew this protection for a sack that cost him a game, or yes, but he fumbled the ball. This was a good Zeke Elliott performance without a caveat and without a real amount of help from the offensive line. So therefore, he got a really good PFF grade in the game, which is nice because over the season, he's had all these great stats. He was the rushing champion, right? Top
another stat
guy.
I don't really look at, but I'm pretty sure he had it.
Right. So he was the rushing leader. Therefore, he should have been the top graded running back at PFF. But he wasn't. His grade at PFF was dramatically lower. His rank, I think it's in the 20s now. A lot of the people above him are guys with a lot fewer carries, so it's not like an apples-to-apples comparison. You can weed out probably 10, 15 of those guys who have dramatically lower playing time. We're grading a sort of efficiency rather than outright production. But the point is, Zeke's grade has been a lot worse than his stats would indicate because he's done a lot of bad things in there as well that don't necessarily get highlighted. His blocking has been poor. He had twice the number of fumbles as any other running back, even though I think he only lost one of them or two of them.
So that's called luck.
Right, so they haven't shown up as well. But I think this was a nice kind of point to that is that, yeah, okay, our grades are way lower on Zeke than you might think. There's reason for them. And look, here's evidence that we don't just hate Zeke. When he grades well, when he does the good things and doesn't screw up, we grade him well.
And if the run game's really good, it is helpful. I mean, we don't hate the run game. It's more, so if you do anything well, it's helpful. It's more the percentages that it will be productive that is the issue. Because so Zeke runs for all those yards. He did a great job. They split him up pretty evenly, 14 carries in the first half, 15 in the second half. And 56 yards after contact in the second half. Had a couple big runs, that stiff arm from hell and everything. So he did make things effective. Still came down to a couple big plays that Dak made. Key red zone throw, the key run on 3rd and long. And he got away from Dak had that one red zone interception, which was really close to pass interference, but a really nice play by KJ Wright.
I mean, it was pass interference. We just decided it was close enough that we don't care in the playoffs.
Yeah, those are tough.
I don't quite understand that argument
plays.
And I've heard it's not just, I can't remember who, was it Mike Pereira was that official at the time? I've heard it from multiple guys over the past few weeks. They've been like, yeah, I mean, it's a bang-bang play, so we're, yeah, maybe he was early, but it's a bang-bang play, so who cares, essentially, was the line. I don't understand.
I think he was more trying to say it's tough to see in real time.
No, that's not what he's saying, because they're saying they were replaying it at the time. They were reviewing it. They were saying, well, yeah, it's a bang-bang play.
You can't review pass interference.
But they were reviewing the score, right?
Yeah, of course, but you can't you can't say, oh, actually, on the play, it was pass interference. You can't do that.
But his argument is that because it was a bang-bang play, it's close enough that we let it go. That's kind of the whole point of all this, is that, sure, you could say that about pretty much every play called down at the one as well. I mean, yeah, it's tough to see that so quickly, live, so screw it. Yeah, no. That's not the point. The point is to get these right. And if he's early, he's early. It doesn't matter that he's close.
Yeah.
Now, the alternative view is that was a bad pass behind the player that actually was almost the underthrown defensive pass interference.
Oh, trust me, I would have hated it. That was a bad throw.
We've campaigned before, just shouldn't be pass interference.
That'd be my biggest argument for it.
If that was your argument, this is a bad pass and we're not going to bail out with the penalty, I'm all on board. But the argument that it was close, so let's let it run.
Oh no, I'm all for not rewarding Dak for that throw. Dak played pretty well, or at least the results were pretty good, other than that throw from a clean pocket, 16 of 20 for 178. Only under pressure on 14 out of 34 dropbacks. Cowboys defense, so we have to give them some credit, right, for this? It's not just game plan oriented by the Seahawks, but the Cowboys defense remain one of those teams that is dangerous defensively. But as we saw with the Bears, you can't just sit there and rely on your defense. The offense is a huge factor. The Cowboys' highest graded players, both linebackers, Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith, continuing to play extremely well.
Leighton Vander Esch had 8 stops in this game, which is an insane number.
Jalen with 4. Look at the defensive line stops. DeMarcus Lawrence had 4. He had 4. Malik Collins had 3. Antoine Woods, he had a couple of huge plays against the run. He had 3 stops. So there was the front 7 for Dallas just made a whole bunch of plays. So when we talk about Seattle running the ball a lot, staying off schedule, credit Dallas for keeping them off schedule.